Good afternoon to everyone in China and good morning to everyone in Europe. Welcome again to the EU SME Centre Webinar series. And we're very pleased to see so many of you on board again at this webinar, although we're only really in the second half of the summer. I'd like to take you again very briefly for those that are new to the webinar panel through some of the panel controls that you can use. Most importantly, I'd like to remind you that you've got a question box where you can raise any questions or comments that you would like to raise with us or with our speaker today. For those of you that are not too familiar to the EU SME Centre yet, the Centre is an initiative from the European Union to assist European SMEs in their approach to the Chinese market and to develop and maintain their commercial activities here in China. And we're doing that by providing free confidential information and advice, as well as some practical support services and tools in 4 different areas, mainly business development, legal issues, standardization and conformity assessment, as well as human resources and training development. One of the tools that we've been publishing earlier this year and which is becoming increasingly popular amongst the center's users is our diagnostic quiz, Are You Ready for China?, which is providing you a number of questionnaires and self-assessment tests to help you to understand how ready you are or not to the Chinese market. It helps you to, by providing you some sort of checklist on how to do business in China, and by providing you on the basis of the answers that you give us a number of further references where you can improve your understanding of the Chinese market. This is only, of course, one of the many services which the EU SME Centre is providing and which are all available for you for free on the website eusmecentre.org.cn. And one of the tools we've developed is the webinar panel. We've been touching on an extensive number of topics in the last year when we set up the webinar panel, and today we'll be touching on a sector-specific webinar on how to successfully import cosmetics onto the Chinese market. This is Bonamizan from the EU SME Centre, and with this I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today, which will share his expertise and knowledge on the cosmetics market in China. So Michael Jang, I'd like to welcome you to the webinar.
Thank you.
And with this I am handing over to you to share the experience you have, the extensive experience you have on importing cosmetics onto the Chinese market. Welcome to the webinar and welcome to everyone.
This is okay, right?
Absolutely. We can see your screen now, so the floor is yours, Michael.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for inviting me to give a presentation today about how to successfully import cosmetics onto the Chinese market. I hope that my presentation can help European companies with their products, with their export into China. Before I talk about my presentation today, I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Michael Jang. I received my PhD in chemistry from University of Science and Technology of China. I'm right now the R&D department manager at the Chemical Inspection and Regulation Service, CIRS China. I have over 7 years chemical regulatory consultancy experience, and I specialize in safety assessment and registration of new substances and cosmetics in China. Right now, I'm also managing a staff team who are responsible for dossier preparation and communications with authorities within our offices based in Hangzhou of China. Today, my presentation will be given in 4 parts. Firstly, I will give you an overview of the Chinese cosmetic market. In the second part of my presentation, I will talk about the main Chinese regulations and compare them with the new EU cosmetic product regulations. In the third part of my presentation, I will give you a step-by-step guidance on how to export cosmetics in China. And in the last part of the presentation, I will introduce you to relevant Chinese organizations, and I will also share some useful resources where you can find more information. Part 1, overview of the Chinese cosmetics market. China is the third largest cosmetics in the world. However, the per capita spending of Chinese is at a low level. This is mainly because China has a huge population. Even though the market size is big, but the per capita spending is still very low. So there's a great potential in China for the average ordinary citizens to spend more on cosmetics in the future. And the annual growth rate in cosmetics market in China is also high. The average growth rate is greater than 6%, and I will share with you more data in my later slide. And one of the most interesting phenomena in China is that foreign cosmetics companies dominate Chinese market because Chinese consumers prefer buying and consuming cosmetics manufactured or made by foreign companies. They believe that the cosmetic products made by foreign companies have higher quality and safety. The following chart shows you the retail value of cosmetics by wholesale and retail enterprises from 2007 to 2012. Data is from the National Bureau of Statistics of China, or NBS. If you look at this chart, in 2007, the total retail value of cosmetics in China is only 48.8 billion RMB. In 2012, this number has increased to 134 billion RMB. If you look at the yearly growth rate, the minimum year growth is in 2010, that's 16.6%. For other years, the yearly growth has been kept above 16%. It's always between 6% and 20%, and this trend will continue according to other resources. This slide shows the distribution of cosmetic companies in China. The data is based on the number from 2010, and there are many cosmetic companies back in 2010, around 3,245, and a majority of those companies are based in Guangdong Province, Zhejiang Province, Jiangsu Province, Shanghai, and Fujian. But if you look at the northern and western part, no, many companies. There are not many cosmetic companies in the western part, or northern part of China. For many of you who export cosmetics to China, the first step is always about finding distributors in China. And distributors follow the same trend, mainly based in Guangdong, Zhejiang, Jiangsu, Shanghai area. And as I mentioned earlier, there are many domestic cosmetic companies in China as well. However, they have only taken 20% market share in China. China has great demand for imported cosmetics. There's also strong competition in China, and here's why. The following data is from CFDA's website, and it summarizes the number of imported cosmetic products approved by CFDA between 2011 and 2013. If you look at the data, in 2011, around 7,000 imported ordinary use cosmetics approved by CFDA, and 1,000 imported special use cosmetics were approved by CFDA in 2011. In 2012, this number has, for imported ordinary use cosmetics, the number has been increased from 7,000 to 11,000, and for special use cosmetics, the number is kind of the same. If you look at the big increase, the number of imported cosmetic products in 2012 has increased by 51% compared to the number of cosmetic products approved in 2011. If you look at the 2013, there's another 25.8% compared to 2012. So the number of approved imported cosmetics continue to increase in China. That means there's a great demand in China because all companies think that China is a good market, but that also means strong competition. Now I'll move on to the second part of my presentation. In this part, I'll mainly talk about cosmetic regulations, talk about how to the main requirements of Chinese regulations and compared with the European requirements. The following slide shows you some of the main cosmetic regulations in China. In China, there are many cosmetic regulations and they are very fragmented. There's no single cosmetic regulation in Europe. So there are many rules, laws, or measures. I've selected a few the key regulations in China. And the first one is MOH's Order 3, Regulations on the Hygiene Supervision over Cosmetics. It was issued by MOH back in 1989. So it's a very old regulation. And basically the regulation says that if you place cosmetics on Chinese market, you need to get approval. That's it. However, the regulation did not give detailed rules about how to apply for license and how to prepare label. That's why later we have the measures for the administration of hygiene licenses for cosmetics issued in 2010. We have detailed rules for implementation of the regulations on hygiene supervision over cosmetics issued in 1991. And all rules and regulations about how to get licenses and how to prepare labels. And the other important regulation I need to mention in this slide is Hygiene Standard for Cosmetics 2007. It was issued by MOH in the Ministry of Health in 2007. It sets a safety standard of cosmetics on Chinese market. So if you place cosmetics on Chinese market, you need to make sure your products comply with the requirements in the standard. For many companies who place cosmetic ingredients, especially new cosmetic ingredients on Chinese market, they need to pay attention to the guidelines for the registration and evaluation of new cosmetic ingredients. It was issued by CFDA, SFDA in 2011. As I mentioned earlier, the Chinese regulations are quite fragmented, so I will try my best to compare the Chinese requirements with the new EU Cosmetics Regulation, EC 1223/2009, issued in 2009. I will compare their differences from the following 7 aspects: definition, competent authorities, obligations of responsible person, cosmetic product dossier, nanomaterials and animal testing, labeling requirements, and the ingredient requirements. And the first part is definition. In Europe, cosmetic product means any substance or mixture intended to be placed in contact with external parts of the human body or with the teeth and the mucous membranes of the oral cavity with a view exclusively or mainly to cleaning them, perfuming them, changing their appearance, protecting them, keeping them in good conditions, or correcting body odors. In China, yes, the definition is very similar. However, there's a very big difference between China and Europe. In China, the teeth and the mucous membranes of oral cavity are excluded. That means toothpastes in China are not regarded as cosmetics. In Europe, yes, toothpastes are regarded as cosmetics. This slide compares the authorities in China with authorities in Europe. In China, there are mainly 3 authorities who are responsible for managing or controlling cosmetic products. The first one is CFDA. CFDA is responsible. It's abbreviated for China Food Drug Administration, and it is responsible for drafting relevant laws. It is also responsible for issuing the required licenses of cosmetic products placed on Chinese market. And second authority, important authority in China is CIQ, or China Inspection and Quarantine Bureau. They are responsible for manufacturing management. For example, if you want to set up a legal entity in China manufacturing cosmetics, you need to get their approval. Also, CIQ is responsible for checking and the quality and safety cosmetics and cosmetic labeling at ports for imported cosmetics. The third one is State Institution of Industry and Commerce. They are mainly responsible for market surveillance. In Europe, we have European Commission, We have the European Parliament and Council, we have member states, we have the scientific committee, SCCCS. Sorry. It says audio collection restored.
That's okay, we can still hear you well, Michael.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I'll move on. All right. Now we'll compare the obligations of the responsible person and the Chinese and EU. In China, we also have the responsible person. For example, if a foreign company tries to export its Hello?
Yes, Michael, we can hear you. There's been a bit of a cut on our connection, but if you can take it on from here, that's all right. And I apologize for that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now, Michael. Michael, hello?
Is okay?
Yes, we can hear you well, so you can move on with the presentation. So I apologize for all the participants. We're sitting at different locations in China, Michael and myself.
Or there's a bad collection there, but I will try to continue.
Yes, you can go on with the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, yes. In China, if a foreign company is exporting its cosmetic product to China, they will need to appoint a local agent to assist with okay. So the foreign company will need to appoint a local agent to assist with product registration, and this agent is also called the responsible person. In China, the responsible person is only responsible for product registration. Sometimes they're responsible for the preparation of a dossier, and the name of a responsible person will not appear on product label, and they are not responsible for product safety at all. But in Europe, the obligations of responsible person are much heavier. For example, in Europe, the responsible person is taking legal responsibility for product safety and the legal keeping cosmetic product dossier for inspection. And finally, the name of a responsible person needs to appear on product label. This is also a very big difference and a big concern to many companies. This slide shows you the difference between the product information file in Europe and the cosmetic registration dossier in China. In Europe, a product information file consists of the following parts: technical product description, detailed product composition, single ingredients data, including information on additives and added contaminants, manufacturing information and product safety assessment, product stability data, and scientific claim report, and post-market surveillance of health-related undesirable effects. In China, the cosmetic registration dossier consists of application form, product formula, manufacturing process and diagram, product quality standard, testing report from a cosmetic testing institution approved by the CFDA and related materials, product package, certified document, and statement on the related problems, medical disease, power of attorney, safety assessment of risk substances, evidence of use for some product types, and some other documents that may be helpful, for example, GMP. Yes, each EU or China has many requirements on the documents in a dossier. I would like to outline the main differences between EU and China. For example, in Europe, the product safety assessment is conducted on, mainly the safety assessment is conducted on the ingredient itself. In China, the safety assessment is conducted on the risk substances in a ingredient. This is one difference. And the second difference is that China, we mainly rely on testing reports to ensure the safety of finished cosmetic products. In Europe, you see, the result of safety assessment is a key. Also in Europe, you need to provide product stability data. In China, you do not need to provide product stability data. However, in China, you need to provide testing reports from a designated testing institution approved by CFDA. In Europe, you do not need to do that. And also, in China, the product formula required, the format is very different from the format given in Europe. So if you have a copy of product information file, only part of them can be used for registering your cosmetics in China. You need to change it and adapt it to meet China's requirements. Animal tests and nanomaterials are big issues in China, mainly because nanomaterial is not allowed in children's products and there are no other requirements on nanomaterials. And animal test on finished cosmetics is mandatory for registration. If you would like to register your cosmetics in China, you must send it to a CFDA designated labs to do animal tests. And you cannot avoid it, and there's no way to avoid it. In Europe, the animal tests on finished cosmetics are banned. And for nanomaterials, Europe has special labeling requirements for nanomaterials. For example, if you use a nanomaterial, you probably need to label it on your product label. And SCCS will be responsible for safety assessment of nanomaterials. Many companies will have the question is that how we can seek a balance between EU animal test ban in Chinese market. And the solution we suggest is that European companies may make customized product formula or aim for Chinese market. And they can sell those customized products in China while they can sell other products on EU market.
Michael, on that slide, what do you mean specifically for having a customized name for China?
I mean, yes, you can change product formula or you can change product name for China.
Okay.
This slide compares the labeling requirements between China and the EU. In China, the name, the address of the manufacturer, the name and the address of the importer, distributor, and the indication of shelf life is mandatory. In Europe, the name of the registered name and the address of the responsible person. So in China, you need to give the name address of the manufacturer. In Europe, you need to give the name address of the responsible person. Also in Europe, indication of shelf life is not mandatory for cosmetic products with a shelf life more than 30 months. In China, it is mandatory. That means if you manufacture cosmetics in Europe, you export it to China. In Europe, yes, you do not need to indicate the shelf life. But if you want to export to China, you need to provide a shelf life. Also in Europe, you need to enable nanomaterials, allergen substances, and claim of or other claim of no animal test. In China, there are no such requirements. And the final difference I'm going to talk about is the ingredient requirements. In China, if a company would like to use a new cosmetic ingredient in their product, they need to acquire a separate pre-market approval for the new cosmetic ingredients. And also, a company needs to make sure all ingredients meet safety requirements and restriction conditions in hygienic standard for cosmetics issued in 2007, and the standard is now being revised. And a new cosmetic ingredient is the one that is not listed on inventory of existing cosmetic ingredients in China or IECSE. However, in Europe, a company can use new cosmetic ingredients without any issue as long as they have conducted safety assessment to ensure it is okay to use. So pre-market approval is not required for regular new cosmetic ingredients. In Europe, yes, the products formula need to meet their safety requirements and restriction conditions in Cosmetics Regulations EC 12.1223, which is online. Now I will move on to the third part of my presentation. In this part of presentation, I will give you a step-by-step guidance about how to export cosmetics to China. Step 1, you need to identify appropriate distributors. You need to make sure there's a market for your products. Step 2, after you have identified appropriate distributors and your own market, you can start prepare for the registration of your cosmetic products in China. Step 3, after you have finished the registration of cosmetics, you can do some CAQ, your importers, distributors can apply for a CAQ inspection and conduct the customer clearance. And step 4, you're ready to sell in China. Step 1, identify appropriate distributors. A good distributor is one that should have close collaborations with the following sales channels: department stores, supermarkets or hypermarkets, professional stores, salons, specialty stores, and internet retailing. It's very important to look at your products to determine whether they are high-end cosmetics or mid-end cosmetics. And then you can identify appropriate sales channels and find the right distributors who may have the resources to collect you with those sales channels. Step 2, CFDA Registration of Cosmetics. And this part, step 2, is a key of this presentation. I will just use 4 or 5 slides to show you how CFDA registration is done in China. You will also learn a lot about the document requirements, duration, and the cost. But firstly, we need to take a look at how CFDA is regulating cosmetics in China. In China, CFDA is taking a categorized approach against the cosmetics. Cosmetics are categorized into 2 parts. And first one is ordinary use cosmetics, and second one is special use cosmetics. Ordinary use cosmetics mainly refer to hair care, layer care, skin care, perfume, and makeup products. And for this type of cosmetics, you only need to get a record-keeping certificate from authorities. For special use cosmetics such as hair growth, hair dye, perm, sunblock, you need to apply for a hygiene license from authorities. And it's more time-consuming and more difficult to get a license for special use cosmetics in China. Again, I have to mention, a foreign company needs to appoint a Chinese responsible agent to assist them with the registration. Right now, all imported cosmetics are approved by CFDA in Beijing. However, this will change in the future. I can talk more later about this. Then, shall we do a poll?
Yes, as you've mentioned, Ryan, we saw Michael. This is, I mean, of course, it's going to depend on which product you're putting on the market, which will be essential to identify which required CFDA license will be necessary. So I'll just launch the first poll to try to gauge the audience that we're having with us today. So the question appears on your screen just now, and the question is really about what kinds you manufacture and try to put on the Chinese market. Is it skincare, hair care, perfume, sunblock, or others? So it's interesting also for us to see who is participating to this webinar. Your votes are coming in gradually. I'm giving you a little bit more time to answer. Only 1/3 of you have answered so far. I suppose that also some of you are possibly intermediaries and not directly trying not directly manufacturing or putting a product on the Chinese market. So with this, I'm closing the polls and I'm sharing the results with everyone. So Michael, you can see that about, almost half of today's participants, 44% to be specific, are manufacturing skincare products, another 11 product hair care products, another 11% perfumes, and then also a minority of sunblock companies, but 30% of the participants in today's audience are producing other products than the ones listed initially in that list. Is that your experience also from the work you're doing yourself with products, be in terms of volumes, and what would be additional comments you'd like to add to this?
I think that's consistent with what we've done and what we've seen. A majority of imported cosmetics in China are ordinary use cosmetics, such as skincare, makeup products. And from our experience, we've been mainly working with skincare products and companies who manufacture perfumes and makeup. And yes, a few cases that we may have to register special use cosmetics, for example, sunblock products. And for other, even there's one thing I need to mention, that for skincare products, if your products are made for a specific type of groups, for example, children, and that kind of products may be treated as special use cosmetics. Even though they belong to ordinary cosmetics, they are reviewed like special use cosmetics, and it can be more difficult to register special use cosmetics in China. Okay.
Yes, because as you're saying, Michael, I think that here we've got about, well, close to altogether, you know, without having an extensive list. I think we didn't include in the list makeup, for instance, but even then all the other products are already accounting for more than 75% of the answer. So thank you for the comment. So I'm hiding again the results, and I'll let you go on with the further part of the presentation through CFDA, Michael.
This slide shows you the procedure for CFDA registration of cosmetics. And the first step is that if a foreign company and you are exporting your product to China, you need to appoint a Chinese responsible agent. This agent can be a service provider. This agent can also be your distributors in China. And then the agent should submit their business license, the appointment letter, along with other necessary documents, and submit it to CFDA in Beijing. The CFDA Beijing will review the documents and decide whether to give you the username and password to access CFDA's online registration system. So the first step, appointing a Chinese responsible agent. The second step is to apply for a username and password to access CFDA's registration system. And this process takes around 1 month. After you have obtained the username and password, you can start preparing for the product dossier, the documents you are going to submit to CFDA. You should get the relevant technical documents and review formula and label, which I will talk a little more later. And you should also prepare sending your samples to China and do the animal test in CFDA accredited lab. And this part of the process can be very long, and mainly because sometimes you realize that you need to adjust your formula or label, and for some type of products, the testing process can be long as well. After you have prepared all relevant documents, after you have acquired the testing reports from CFDA accredited lab, you can prepare the final product dossier and submit it to CFDA. After CFDA has received your dossier, they will check the complete list of your dossier. If it's complete, your dossier will be handled to the technical review committee, who will review the safety of your products. If your product is okay, CFDA will issue a relevant approval license, either replicating certificate or hygiene license. If your products are not safe or any documents are missing, CFDA will request more documents. So the whole process, the record-keeping process, application of username and password takes 1 month, and it takes 2 to 7 months to prepare and submit your dossier. And the review process takes another 1 to 3 months. So if you add them together, the quickest time to get an ordinary use cosmetic product approved in China is around 4 or 5 months, and you can increase to 9 months or 10 months. As mentioned earlier, right now all imported cosmetics in China are approved by CFDA in Beijing, but this will change. And this year, in May, there was a CFDA reform which has incurred great impact on the cosmetic ingredients. I've summarized the main changes here in this table. For example, under the old system or the current system, CFDA, we call the main authority CFDA, State Food Drug Administration. It's a semi-ministerial body. But now it's called CFDA, China Food and Drug Administration. It's a ministerial body. And the current system or the old system, imported ordinary use cosmetics are approved by CFDA in Beijing. But this will change in the future. Imported ordinary use cosmetics will be approved by Food and Drug Administration Authority at provincial levels. For example, previously, all documents need to submit it to Beijing, and now you can do it in your own province, in your port, for example, Guangdong or Jiangsu or Zhejiang. And also the third change is that for product license and for cosmetics, comparative inspection previously was done by AQSIQ, or General Administration of Supervision Inspection and Quarantine of PRC. And now the product license is going to be issued by CFDA. The power of CFDA has increased significantly compared to the current or the old system, but we're not sure when imported ordinary use cosmetics will be approved by CFDA at provincial level.
Michael, here I'd like to raise a question which I think a lot of the participants in the audience might have on the point that now the certificates that can be obtained at a local level and not only at the central level like it used to be under the old system with the SFDA in Beijing. What would be your advice here to a European SME producing cosmetics and willing to put their products on the Chinese market, or having done that already? Do they have to see, I mean, what advantages and clear advantages are there? Are there going to be different levels and applications in different provinces between the system that existed at the central level and which is now going to be decentralized? For companies that are placing their products on multiple locations in China, would you still advise to go through a local registration, or does it make sense to go through a central registration? What would be your take on this?
In general, I think CFDA reform is good news for industry. Previously, all documents are submitted to SFDA in Beijing, so there could be a long queue, a long waiting period for the experts to review them. But now, if companies are doing their product registrations at the local level, that means there will be less queue in Beijing. So this could potentially reduce time. But there's one thing for sure, regarding questions: if your product has been approved by an authority at the local level, you can go to other markets without any trouble. You do not need to get your product approved in every local authority, every province.
Thank you for the clarification.
This slide summarizes the main dossier requirements for ordinary use cosmetics. Basically, you need to submit an application form. It's a standard form. You need to prepare Chinese product name and basis of nomenclature. You also need to give a product formula according to China's requirements. Product quality and safety control documents, most of the companies have that. Original packaging of products, that's relatively easy. Testing report and relevant data from CFDA's accredited labs. If you send samples to China, and they can talk to CFDA accredited labs. That's very easy as well. Safety assessment report of cosmetic ingredients. Again, I have to emphasize that in China, safety assessments of cosmetic ingredients mainly focus on the assessment of risk substances in ingredients rather than on the ingredients itself. Stamped copies of power of attorney if you appoint a Chinese responsible agent. You also need to provide a letter of commitment that the new cosmetic ingredients meet the forbidden or restricted requirements for high-risk substances, or we call it medical disease compliance statement. The key document that's required for product registration in China is a free seal of certificate in the country of origin. You also need to provide a brief description, diagram, production process, and text version information of technical requirements and other materials which are helpful for review. And also, if you look at the up right corner of the slide, for children, for cosmetic products for children, pregnant and breastfeeding women, you need to provide additional statement or document on the principle of formula design analysis and why you are using formula and why they are safe. This is additional requirement and this is a new requirement. For special use cosmetics like sunblock products, the main difference is that you need to submit the efficacy ingredients and relevant basis of cosmetics to prove that it has such functions for uses. Label, that's also a key issue. A majority of companies who export their cosmetic in China will use the language of the original labels at the country of origin, and when they sell those products to China, they will prepare a Chinese label and they will use a Chinese label to cover their original packaging. And this is just one example. In China, you need to show this information on your Chinese label, not English label. You always use your Chinese label to cover your English label. For example, you need to give product name, night content, country of origin, name of the manufacturer, name of the address of the manufacturer, ingredient list, warning statements, instructions for use, name and address of importer, distributor, hygiene license number, or record keeping number. That's the number of your approval license. You also need to give data of manufacturer and shelf life, which is key for China. In Europe, shelf life may not be mandatory. Batch code expiration date. For sunblock products, SFPF value should be mentioned, and for cosmetic content like sun 15 gram or 15 milliliters, the label contents do not need to put on the label, but they should be mentioned in a leaflet that comes with the cosmetics. Well, this slide is the essence of this slide. For many companies, the duration and the cost of getting a CFDA license is very important for many companies before they decide whether they to go to Chinese market. So just to give you a basic estimation and example, in China, for imported ordinary use cosmetics, the total estimated cost is around 12,000 to 18,000 RMB per product. And the exchange ratio between euro and RMB is 8.2, so you can calculate it in euro by yourself. And in general, it takes 6 to 8 months to register an imported ordinary cosmetic product in China. For imported special use cosmetics, the cost is much higher. It really depends on your claim on the efficacy ingredients. So the range is much higher. It's between 19,000 yuan to 80,000 yuan. And generally, it takes 9 to 14 months to register a special use cosmetic product in China. And this fee includes all consultancy fee and testing fee. So that's a very good estimate. And the specific cost depends on product types. For different type of product, the testing fee, the cost of the testing is different. After you have registered your product with CFDA and you have obtained the CFDA license, you can ask your distributor or logistic provider to do CAQ inspection and customs clearance. And CAQ mainly check labels, and sometimes they randomly carry out heavy metal and microbiological tests for first imported products at ports. And this part is should not become your main concern, because if you have a distributor in China, if you have a good logistic provider, they should easily help you clear the customers at ports. So you should really focus on the market research, identifying good distributors, and product registration, and customer clearance should not become your main concern. And this slide just to show you the basic procedure for CAQ inspection and customer clearance. I'm not going to read it in detail. I'm going to just read the circle. Basically shows you your agent or buyer need to submit their information to CAQ and get the CAQ number, and then make sure you use CAQ's online system to provide information regarding products to be imported into China, and then CAQ will do the customer inspection at ports. If they think that your labor is okay and your product is safe, they will issue a qualification certificate, and you can use a qualification certificate to clear customers. Before I move on to the final part of presentation, I think, Ben, there's another poll, right?
We've got another second poll indeed to, again, you've given a quite extensive presentation here about the registration procedures with CFDA. So one question we'd like to launch really is on the factors which are making companies postpone or give up entering the Chinese market. So the poll should have appeared on your screen already, and the answers are A, animal testing, B, the expensive cost, C, the time, how time-consuming the procedures can be, D, that you haven't found any suitable buyers and partners or any other issues. So your answers are coming in gradually, and I'm just taking in the votes. I'm giving you a little bit more time to finalize the poll. There isn't really any one of the points which is coming as a clear-cutting issue that you're facing. I'm closing and sharing the results here, and Michael, you can see from the screen that animal testing, expensive cost and time the consumption of time is among the three principal points which companies have come up with. So that's about 75% of the answerees. Just after is coming the question of not having found a suitable buyer or other issues. This question of animal testing and the expensive cost, I mean, from what you've just shared, it looks like maybe the system is in fact not so expensive. Of course, depending on the batches and volumes you're intending to put on the market. But can you give us a little bit more insight here of whether you have any surprising answers here, or if it's just following what you have in your experience?
Sorry, can you repeat your key question here?
So is this? I mean, the answers you can see from the poll. Is this the experience that you have yourself in your work, or were you expecting any other sort of different answers?
During our daily communications with our potential EU clients, we feel like animal test ban is their biggest concern, especially for many medium or large brands. They want to favor the consumers in Europe, and they do not want to get onto Chinese market because of animal test ban. Because if they test their products in China and register products in China, and they will receive complaints from their customers in Europe. And for those companies, and they prefer having the claim that cruelty-free. But if they go to the Chinese market, they cannot call their products cruelty-free anymore. So that's their main concern.
In fact, we've received a number of questions, and one question is directly relating to this, so let me ask it just now. So one of the participants is asking whether it's likely that the mandatory animal testing will be removed from the requirements in the near future. What is your take on that?
It's a little, it's very interrupted. I did not hear your questions very clearly.
Okay. Do you hear me okay now? I can ask you the question again. Hello, Michael?
Yes?
So one of the questions we have is whether it's likely that the animal testing, the mandatory animal testing, will be removed as a requirement in the near future.
In China, I think there's a long way to go before the animal test requirement be removed. So we shall wait, and we're not sure when. No matter what other countries are doing, China is always doing it in its own way. I will always prefer that someday China can remove the animal test requirement, but now it's not going to be possible in the near future.
Okay, thank you for your impression on that. I'm just closing or hiding the polls, and if you can go through for the next section of your presentation then.
Okay, I'll move on. Right, I think that's near the end of my presentation today. Before I say goodbye, I think I will introduce you to some of the main organizations in China where you can obtain more information. And the first one is China Food and Drug Administration. And the second one is AQSIQ. The third one is Ministry of Health. And the fourth one is a review center. The fifth one is China Association of Fragrance, Flavor, and Cosmetic Ingredients. And last one is our company's website, and where you can also find a lot of chemical regulatory information. And here's a summary of my today's presentation today. China is a big and very promising cosmetic market. There are many differences between China and the EU's cosmetic regulations, for example, animal test ban. In China, the pre-market approval of cosmetics can be time-consuming compared to Europe. In Europe, you only need to prepare a product off there and notify it to authorities, and then you can sell. You do not need to wait around 3 or 6 months. Registration of imported ordinary use cosmetics may become easier due to CFDA reform, because in the current system, they are registered and approved by CFDA in Beijing. In the future, local authorities can do that as well. All right. Before I go, I think I said that we do have some free resources available upon request. For example, the approved ingredient list in China. We have the inventory existing cosmetic ingredients in China, i.e. CSC 2012. We also have the i.e. CSC 2003. It's in English. And the second important document we have is Hygienic Standard for Cosmetics 2007. It's written in Chinese, but you can find lots of restriction requirements in it. And regarding labeling standards, we have 3 national standards available in Chinese. If you're interested in those presentations, you can contact the info at the EU SME Centre, and we can send them. We will send those documents to EU SME Centre, and you can contact EU SME Centre to obtain those documents. Here's white QE.
Thank you, Michael. I think we've reached more or less the end of your presentation. I'd like to thank you very much for your time to share your insights and experience in the cosmetics industry. Now, we've received several questions from the audience, and I'd like to put them forth to you if you have to start some time to bear with us. Well, we've tried to answer some of these already, but one of the recurrent questions we've received from a number of companies is when referring to the registration procedures, one of the main questions is really whether it's possible to also file in documents in English, or if everything has to be in Chinese.
Do you mean if everything is to be provided in Chinese when you do product registration?
Absolutely.
Yes. If you have English version, you need to translate it into Chinese. And for English certificates like certificate pre-sale, you need to, in addition to translation, you also need to do a localization. So in the end, everything needs to be in Chinese.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that will help some of the companies that participate today. Now, the next question is on the labeling part of your presentation, where you indicated the special requirements for products intended for children, breastfeeding, and pregnant mothers. The question is whether on other products which are not intended for these users, if you have to specifically indicate that these products are not approved for children and pregnant women and breastfeeding mothers, and if not, then how do these groups know that these products are not approved for their use?
I'm sorry, I did not hear this question very clearly. So are you saying that are there any labeling requirements for cosmetics for children and breastfeeding women?
So you already clarified that this was necessary, yes? It has to be indicated specifically.
Excuse me?
You indicated during the presentation that there must be some, that there is, it has to be going through the particular registration mechanism. It cannot go through the ordinary use registration. But so the question is whether this has to be stated specifically on the label that this had to go through this registration and that it's actually intended for this audience, well, for the pregnant women, breastfeeding mothers and children. Has this to be labeled on the other products that they are not intended for these user groups?
Are you?
Hello, Michael. It seems like we've got a problem in the audio.
All right. It's very fragmented, like a voice volume. I really did not catch the question. How it is in relation to it. And do you mean the registration of those products? Are there any requirements or?
So the question is, well, let me ask one more time. Otherwise, maybe we'll leave it for today because the audio is not very good, maybe. But so the question is for products which are not intended for children, breastfeeding mothers, and pregnant women. If they are not intended for those users, does it have to be specifically indicated on the label?
If they are not intended for children or breastfeeding, they should not be. No. Oh, I think I understood the questions. 你说那个婴幼儿产品不能把标签上说明什么的。Yes, I think it really depends on whether those products are intended for those specific type of groups of people, for example, children or breastfeeding women. If they are intended for them, and if you make the claim that they are intended for children breastfeeding, they will review like special use cosmetics.
Okay, that's well understood. So that means that it's the opposite way around. So if it's not intended for these communities, then it should not be indicated they are not intended for them, but that the user should know that they are not intended for them.
Yes, if they are not intended, please leave it.
Okay, so maybe a couple of last questions. One is from the users in Germany who is asking whether they need to register the products every year again. I think you made some references to that, but as the question just came through, I'd like to have your views again on this.
Excuse me.
Okay, I think so. Does the product have to be? So do you need to apply for a product certificate every year?
Do they export their product to China, or do they?
Yes, to place their product on the Chinese market.
Okay, so if a German company exports a cosmetic product to China, in either way they need to appoint a Chinese responsible person to register the product. And the responsible person can be a consultancy company, it can also be their distributor in China. So all documents need to be submitted and submitted by this Chinese responsible person. you cannot send documents to authorities directly from Germany.
Okay. The question, I think that we've got some major internet connection issues today. So the question was whether this has to be done every year, or if it can be done on a biannual year basis, or. Okay.
You mean the approval is done every year or
yes,
on an
approval.
annual basis? No, no, it's not that known. CFDA will carry out the review of cosmetics basically every month. So they will review applications batch by batch, and they will review the cosmetics month by month.
Okay, I think the audio is quite bad, Michael. So I think we'll leave it for there. I mean, for those that can still hear me properly, well, this question on whether the products need to be registered again every year, I think the answer to that would be that the CFDA license is valid for 4 years, so the applicant should renew this every 4 months before the expiration of the license or the certificate, but only on a 4-year basis. So it's not on an annual basis. But I think the audio is not so good for us today, Michael, and I apologize for that to you and to today's audience. It's very unfortunate that I'm not so lucky with the audience today, because actually this is the last webinar I'll be moderating with you, and one of my colleagues will be taking over for the future. But Michael, I'd like to thank you for your time, if you can still hear me properly, and I'd like to thank every user of today's webinar for joining us so regularly. We've had a great audience for the last year. I'd like also to comment on what Michael said, that of course the EU SME Centre provides a wide range of resources which can be downloaded upon registration on the website. Also specifically in the area of the cosmetic sector. So if you're not registered yet on the website, I'd like to invite you to register on our website and download the documents there directly. Again, we've had a relatively bad internet connection today, so I apologize for the delays. Don't hesitate to post any further questions you would have directly through to us on our address on info@eusmecentre.org.cn. And well, considering this is the last webinar I'm doing, I'd like to also thank Anita, who's been assisting me all year on, and to wish her a happy birthday, as it's her birthday today. And with this again, thank you to everyone. We are preparing a bright new series of webinars just after the summer. We'll be back again on a regular basis every week. Extensive topics to be covered, some that we've covered in the past and which have been particularly popular, but also we'll be touching on presentations of new reports and guidelines that we'll publish in the next few months, as well as some sector-specific webinars which we haven't managed to cover so far. Well, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. There will be again a short survey, as is usually the case. Thank you for taking 1 or 2 minutes of your time to go through that process, and we're welcoming you, of course, on eusmecentre.org.cn. Thank you very much for your time, and goodbye for now.